Thank you guys all for coming out tonight. We've got a great event lined up. We're excited to get started. Before we do, let me mention that if you look on the screens right now, there's a number that if you text, you can text your vote in on how you feel about tonight's resolution. I'll read it out. It's 435-633-9189. You can only vote once. We got somebody stuffing the ballot box back here. I'm not sure if it's his first time. Do we need that number again? 435-633-9189. Text 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for undecided. I'll read it one more time. 435-633-9189. One for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for undecided. We're going to pull it again at the end to see how the debate, how many minds it changed. All right, one more time. Has everybody got their texting app up? Mansell, I know you don't have the texting app, but I think you can text, right? 435-633-9189er. All right, we all good? Well, welcome, guys, to Atlanta Young Republicans. It'll come back up on the screen. You guys have time to get your votes in, all right? So don't worry about that. Guys, welcome to Atlanta Young Republicans. We are the largest chapter of Young Republicans in the country, something we're very proud of. But we're not just about being the largest. We're about two things at Atlanta Young Republicans. Number one, getting Republicans in the metro Atlanta area elected to office. And number two, we're about growing the party among millennials. If you're interested in joining our team, there's a lot of benefits to becoming a member. We've got our Deputy VP of Membership, Chris Campbell. Where's Chris at? Right there. Chris is raising his hand. If you're interested in becoming a member, talk to Chris about the benefits. And where's Abby at? You can talk to Abby as well. They'll tell you the benefits of becoming an AYR member, or you can join at atlantayoungrepublicans.com. Click on join. You can join online as well. A few people I'd like to thank for helping put this event together. Number one, this guy's been like my right-hand man in putting this thing together, is Alan English, our VP of Events. Alan, let's give Alan a round of applause. And then our two deputy VPs of Political Affairs sitting over here in the same area, Jenny Christensen and Hannah Weiss. Hannah, raise your hand. Let's give them a round of applause. You're going to hear from Jenny here shortly, but now I'm going to hand it over to our VP of Political Affairs, Deborah Furr, to introduce tonight's debate.
Thank you, Gabe. All right. Right now, 19 states in the U.S. allow for sports betting, 23 states for commercial casinos, and even more allow for horse racing. So far, supporters of legal gambling in Georgia have failed to move their gambling bills out of the state legislature and on the ballot for Georgia voters to ultimately decide its fate. But now, with recent budget cuts proposed by Governor Kemp, the gambling bill has more of a chance to pass than ever. So tonight, we're going to debate, should Georgia expand legalized gambling to include casinos, horse racing, and sports betting? And another reminder, if you have not yet voted your opinion as it stands now, go ahead and text the number and vote.
Appreciate it. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Brandon. I'm one of the Deputy Directors of Political Affairs here at AYR. So what I'm going to do is give you guys our debate format, and obviously for you all as well. There's going to be 3 rounds. The first round is going to be opening statements. Then the second round, we're going to have questions, and then half of that is also going to be questions from the moderators and the questions from our online link, which is flashing on the screens. And then the third round will also be closing statements. So keep in mind for everyone out in the crowd as well, if you have a question that you would like to be asked, feel free to keep looking at the screens. There is a link that you can go to and submit that question. And also as well, we'll get started soon. But lastly, like I said, our moderators, it's me, Gabe, and Deborah. And now I'm going to introduce our secretary.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny Christensen and I'm Secretary of Atlanta Young Republicans. I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into who our speakers are tonight. On the opposing side of expanding legalized gambling in Georgia, we have Cole Muzio and Senator Bruce Thompson. Cole Muzio serves as the president and Executive Director of Family Policy Alliance of Georgia. Launching Family Policy Alliance of Georgia in 2017, Cole has forged the leading pro-life force in the state in just a few short years. Under his leadership, the organization became early supporters of Brian Kemp for the nomination and through the general election. After the Kemp victory, Cole was named to the Georgians' First Committee, and he led the charge during the passage of the Heartbeat Bill in 2019. In a short time, Family Policy Alliance of Georgia has become a coveted endorsement, a force at the Capitol, the most significant entity advocating for the values in the state, and a rapidly growing organization. We also have Senator Bruce Thompson of the 14th District. Senator Thompson began his political career in 2003 when he was selected by the White House to serve on an exclusive small business task force alongside Speaker Newt Gingrich and RNC Chairman Michael Steele. He later served as the chairman of Cartersville-Bard Chamber of Commerce. In 2012, Senator Thompson successfully ran for the Georgia State Senate. He chaired the Science and Technology Committee until 2018 and currently serves as the chairman of the Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security Committee. Additionally, she serves on the Appropriations, Finance, and Banking Committees. Bruce is active in his local community and a member of First Baptist Church Woodstock. He and his wife Becky reside in Cherokee County with their 2 children, Faith and Max. Supporting expanding legalized gambling in Georgia, we have Senator Brandon Beach and Governor Haley Barbour. Senator Brandon Beach has served in the Georgia State Senate since 2013. Senator Beach serves as the chairman of the State Transportation Committee and is also a member of the Economic Development, Higher Education, Administrative Affairs, MARTA Oversight, and Rules Committees. Senator Beach previously served on the Alpharetta City Council and the board of the Georgia Department of Transportation and currently serves on numerous boards and commissions in his district. Under his leadership in both his public and private life, Senator Beach has helped to bring more than $91 million to his district for infrastructure and economic development. And our featured speaker of tonight is none other than infamous Governor Haley Barbour. Governor Barbour has worked on multiple notable campaigns and administrations, including President Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, and George H.W. Bush. In 1993, Governor Barbour became chairman of the Republican National Committee. During his tenure in this position, Republicans secured the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years. In 2003, Barbour successfully ran for governor of Mississippi and held that position until 2012. During his governorship, Haley helped to guide the state through 2 major disasters, Hurricane Katrina and the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. During his governorship, Barbour served as chairman of the Republican Governors Association. He would go on and to continue partnering at one of the most powerful lobbying firms in the United States, Barbour, Griffith & Rogers, BGR. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, so we will begin our opening round of opening statements, and we will start with Senator Thompson. 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Well, good evening. So we live in a state where we have or enjoy an incredible governor, and we're very, very fond of the First Lady. It's hard to find anyone in our state that's not fond of what the initiatives are of our First Lady. Our First Lady's main initiative is human trafficking. We live in a state that has the distinction of being the #1 place in the country to do business. Unfortunately, we live in a state that's also in the top 5 of human trafficking. My opposition to human trafficking mirrors almost everyone in our state if you ask them. No one likes human trafficking. Not in South Georgia, not in North Georgia, not in Atlanta. Unfortunately, studies and statistics show that casinos increase human trafficking. It's undisputed, no matter whether you're in New Jersey, Mississippi, Las Vegas, anywhere there's casinos, human trafficking is increased. Until we're able to address this issue, I will remain opposed.
Thank you, Senator Thompson. For the next opening statement, let's hear from Brandon Beach.
Well, before I start my opening statement, I just want to thank y'all for being here, and I want to thank Gabe and the leadership for what y'all do as Atlanta Young Republicans. And I just want to say this. In November, we're going to need all hands on deck to get our president reelected, win our 2 U.S. Senate seats, take back the 6th district. And what I've been talking about a lot is we got to go down ballot too. We cannot afford to lose the House of Representatives at the state level or the state Senate. We've got to keep both chambers in the General Assembly because we have something called redistricting. So thank you for what you do and keep the work up. You know, Let me tell you something that I really believe is probably the best legislation we've ever passed in the state, and it was way before my time, and it was the Hope Scholarship. The Hope Scholarship's done three things. It's kept our best and brightest here. It's allowed kids that couldn't afford to go to college, and it's elevated our universities. We've got 2 universities in the top 20 in the country, University of Georgia and Georgia Tech. It's been great. But when my daughter went to school 13 years ago, she got 100% of Hope. I just got the statistics from the university system. Right now at the University of Georgia, if you're on the Hope Scholarship, you get 63%. And I want to get that Hope Scholarship funding up. Now, do we need to rein in tuition costs and have the Board of Regents rein in tuition costs? Yes. But we also have to look at new revenue streams. The lottery has been stagnant at about $1.1 billion, and yet our population in our universities has went up. Kennesaw State, I believe, is at like 39,000 students now. Georgia State's at 55,000 students. So I looked at this from a revenue standpoint to save the Hope Scholarship, and that's why I took this on. The more I got into it, though, this isn't just about gaming and destination resorts and horse racing. It's economic development and jobs, and it's good. And it's good jobs. So we've got the opportunity to have real investment, and you're going to hear from Governor Barbour. But for example, a casino, a destination resort, because it's not just a casino, it's a 1,000-room hotel, it's restaurants, retail, entertainment. You're talking about a $2.5, $2.6 billion investment. Now, to put that in perspective, the Mercedes-Benz was 1.3, 1.4 billion. So it's 2.5 to 2.6 billion, 5,000 jobs, construction jobs, 7,000 permanent jobs. Same in horse racing. For every horse, there's 20 jobs. So I've been very consistent from the very beginning. This is about economic development, and it's about job creation, and it's about funding the Hope Scholarship. So thank you, and we'll hear more when we hear questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Beach. Cole?
Well, thank you. Look, I feel like I need to go into candidate mode and ask for your vote tonight because I'm the only non-political insider on the stage. I've never run for office before, and therefore I need your – look, I am just amazed and honored to be in the company of such a great teammate as well as some just incredible opponents. And so give these guys a round of applause. I appreciate them. But before I say bad things about you, I want to say something good about you. Listen, in 2020, we're having a debate that very few of us thought we would ever have in our country. And that's about socialism, the merits of socialism. Now, I don't know if Donald Trump is going to be running against an avowed socialist, someone that embraces that label, or someone that just is a socialist and doesn't want to admit it. But we're going to be talking about socialism in 2020. And when we talk about socialism, we can talk about the morality of an economic system that redistributes wealth, that doesn't reward hard work, talent, and a product. There's a lot of similarities between socialism and gambling. But we can talk about the morality of it. But when we're at our best, when we're talking about this in November, October, September, as we're leading up to this election, we're at our best when we talk about how socialism has never, ever worked. And so when we're talking about this tonight, I've got some very esteemed opponents on the other side. You have the former governor of Mississippi, a state senator that's one of the most respected people in office today. But what they're going to do is they're going to tell a great tale of a destination resort that is awesome. But what they're not going to be able to do is to tell you when it's ever worked. And it has been tried plenty of times. There's a litany of states where this has been tried, and it has never worked to raise revenue. It has never worked to reduce crime. In fact, it's increased it. It has never worked in terms of morality. We have sex trafficking out the wazoo every time you bring in a casino. Look, when you go in a casino, you need to understand that the problem gamers that infiltrate a casino that are dominating the people that are there, 35% of those, more than 35% of those have paid for sex already in their life. This is not when a trafficked child goes into a casino and they're looking for customers. They don't just have 100% of possible customers. 35% have already done it. So we need to understand the threat facing our state when we're talking about these issues. And Senator Beach, I just elevated you to governor, but Senator Beach, in his opening statement while talking about something, and look, I think he's a well-intentioned guy. I like Brandon Beach. But in his opening statement, he underscored the problem when you're talking about gambling. When he's talking about hope, he's talking about a system that, look, nobody here is arguing against hope. Nobody's trying to take away hope, but it has under-delivered. 14 cents of every dollar in hope right now goes to college education. And right now, you need to understand that it's a system that's under-delivered, under-promised, and it's also a system that has led people to come back for more. And that's what happens every time with gambling. We're talking about something that has never worked, won't work, and I've got 4 kids in the back, my 3 boys, and my wife who's pregnant with our first girl. We can't afford to risk that in our state. Thank you.
Thanks, Cole. Governor Barbour?
I come from the state that has had legalized casino gaming since the early 90s, more than 25 years. And I can tell you that it has been a huge economic benefit, job creator, taxpayer, tourist increaser the whole time. More than $10 billion of capital expenditure. And my little state, compared to Georgia, is about a fourth your size and about a tenth your wealth. So I understand when the governor said he was worried about enough revenue and maybe we need to cut spending. I understand why Speaker Ralston said, let's form a committee about economic growth. And it mostly has focused on 3 types of legalized gaming: sports betting, horse racing, resort casinos. And the reason is they would rather do that than raise taxes. And I would rather, if it was in my state, I would rather do that than raise taxes. Plus, I have seen the benefits. 38,000 people in Mississippi worked in casinos when I was governor. For many of them, it was their first job. It was an entry-level job where they learned how to do something, and they went on later to become a supervisor, a manager, go out into another business. And it also, casino gaming, generates economic energy for the rest of the economy in the area. Now, I can tell you, a casino is the last place that you want to try to practice sex trafficking, because it is full of police, it is full of security, it is full of cameras, and the people who run the place are on the lookout for it all the time. And it is a myth. It is a myth in my state that when we legalized casino gaming, that it increased crime. In fact, it decreased crime. You know, we've had gambling on the Mississippi Gulf Coast all my life. The difference now is they play with square dice and the winners get paid. And that is just one of the law enforcement benefits that we saw. Today, I hope you will listen to the economic story, the way to help you fill the gap in the state's spending without having to raise Georgians' taxes. And I think you will see that all 3 of these kinds of gaming have a lot to offer Georgians.
Thank you, Governor Barbour. That brings us to the next round of the debate, which is questions and answers. I will remind the audience again, you can submit questions at the tinyurl.com/AYR debate, and we will get those up here and read those shortly. We've got 2 minutes for a response and 2 minutes for rebuttal on each side. We will address who we want the response from, and then the rebuttal can come from either side of the opposition. First question is for Senator Beach. As Governor Kemp looks to make up for around $200 million in projected tax revenue shortfalls and continue funding for the Hope Scholarship, as you mentioned, how much new tax revenue do you expect from each new form of gambling, sports betting, horse racing, and casino gaming, to bring in? Are there other areas that Georgia could look to make up revenue before expanding gambling, such as ending the Georgia film tax credit?
Well, you know, to try to fill the gap of $200 million, there's two ways to raise revenue. Either raise taxes or you go out and create more jobs. And I'm not for raising taxes. I want to grow jobs, and then that grows the economy and grows the budget and the state coffers. I would just say this, that when you look at sports betting, it's really what's driving the conversation right now because of what the Supreme Court did, and all four of our franchises here want to have sports betting, but it really doesn't drive jobs. 85% of sports betting is done through this mobile app, and it doesn't drive a lot of revenue, about anywhere from 25 to 40 million, whereas with the pari-mutuel wagering and horse racing, and really the money's not in the horse racing, the money is in the breeding and the auctions and the horse farms and the hay farms. That's where the money's at. And it would generate anywhere from 350 to 500 million depending, but it would have an economic impact of $1 billion. And then the casinos and the destination resorts, and the governor can talk more about that, but you're talking about 650 to 800 million in that revenue, plus the job creation that it creates. So I think that's my answer, is that if we want to have get to the shortfall of the 200 million, let's grow jobs, number one. If we want to take care of the Hope Scholarship, this is a funding source that could do that. And I would just again say the Hope, in my belief, is it's really one of the best things we've ever done to keep our best and brightest here in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I think we have the blessing of having the Hope Scholarship here. Here's what I would say as a business person. Every business, every person that ever starts a business expects a return on their investment. It's ROI, every single time. First thing we ought to do is look at the Hope and say, what's our ROI for the money we invest into it? You realize that the amount of first-time college students, their first year, that do not return back up. So we're investing in these students through the Hope. They go to 1 year of school and they drop out. That's the first thing. It has nothing to do with the Hope. It has nothing to do with the revenue. As a business person, you wouldn't want to put more money into that if the output of your product isn't there. The second thing is, if we talk about casinos and we talk about gambling, what do they manufacture? They're expecting a return on their investment. Casino.org will state that they don't look for a 10 or 20 or 15 or 20% return. It's 60 to 100% return. Where does that revenue come from? Out of the pockets of this economy. And we talk a little bit about first-time jobs, right? Casino.org, average wage, $8.95. In the state of Georgia right now, we have a labor shortage. Where do you pull those people from for $8.95? I'm pretty sure most people are making over that right now.
Would you agree with their revenue projections?
Directed at me, I would say no. If you look at the statistics, I'm looking at some of the books here, not my books, but some of the books and the statistics that have come from testimony with Congress, and those stats don't line up. It's a myth.
All right, thank you. Next question is for Mr. Muzio. Are you opposed to all three forms of gambling previously mentioned, sports betting, horse racing, and casino gaming? And if so, are you also in favor of eliminating the Georgia lottery?
Well, thank you. All three of those have proven that they don't work. When you're talking about casinos, you're talking a lot about the crime issues. I think in Reno, it's over 20% of crime happens within 1,000 feet of a casino. And look, I appreciate Governor Barbour. I knew he was a smart guy. I didn't know how brave he was until tonight. Look, to come in and own that record for a state that is first in gambling addiction, first in gambling-related arrests, first in casino machines per capita, and you're 46th in education and 50th in poverty rating. The record in Mississippi does not back up what he said. It's been a disaster. That's what we see with casinos, and that's what we see with horse racing, which is a dying industry. Kentucky is having a very difficult time. Look, Kentucky's where the historic horse racing is. If you're going to go, whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if you're going to go see a horse race, you're going to go see it in Kentucky, because that's where the historic nature of it all is. Right now, if we put a horse racing venue in the state of Georgia, you're going to have a hard time with folks like us in this room that have kids or are going to have kids, taking them to a horse racing venue where the horse is going to run around the track for 90 seconds, and then we're going to wait for 30 minutes while they clean up poop. Look, it is a very difficult thing to make a successful horse racing venue in a new state. It does not work. Sports betting doesn't work. All of these are predatory forms of gambling, and we're talking about revenue. The state has proven, look, time and time again, we're talking about what works and what doesn't, what is factual and what isn't. The state loses $3 in revenue for $3 in expenses for every $1 in revenue that it raises. We're talking about something that doesn't work, and it's predatory. Look, I don't think anybody in this room wants to be regressive. Nobody in this room wants to target poor people or minorities. All forms of gambling target poor people, and they target minorities. Clayton County, when we're talking about the lottery, $710 spent per person on the lottery in the state of Georgia. 4 cents on the dollar comes back to Clayton County. When we're talking about Oconee County, one of the richest states and one of the richest counties in Georgia, 57 cents on the dollar comes back to Oconee County. It is disproportionate and it's predatory.
Well, the one point that he makes that is very clearly right, the lottery is basically supported by low-income people. And you already have a lottery. It brings in more than $1 billion a year. You put it to very good use. And I don't know how many people here would like to do away with the lottery and the Hope Scholarship. Well, being a minority one is to be recognized. The fact of the matter is, what y'all are talking about here is destination resort casinos, which are not places where poor people are going to go and spend very large amounts of money, but they're places where poor people can get a good job. The fact of the matter is, I represent Wynn. And I think I'm here and I think they hired me because I was the governor of a state that had casino gaming for so many years and it's been so successful. At Wynn, the average wage is $28 an hour. Now, in Mississippi, that's really a good wage. That Wynn had 4,500 construction workers to build their casino over a 2-year period, more than 2-year period, who made more than that. The average employee at Wynn in Boston, the newest, I bring it up because it's the newest destination resort casino in the United States. They have 6,000 to 7,000 employees that make $60,000 to $70,000 a year. This is not poor people, except poor people who get a chance to go up. And don't think that your construction worker friends would not like to be part of the several thousand construction workers that get to build these kinds of grand hotels.
Can I just say one quick thing, and that's back to the lottery, and Cole, you didn't answer that. Would you be willing to abolish the lottery? I would tell you, we have gambling here. It's called the lottery. It preys on the worst of the worst. It doesn't create a job. The same person that sells beer and cigarettes at a C-store presses a button for a ticket, and the odds are 300 million to 1. So we already have gambling here. We're being a little disingenuous, and I saw your hand go up when you said you wanted to get rid of the lottery, and then when it said get rid of the Hope Scholarship, your hand went down. And that's how we fund the Hope Scholarship, is through the gambling. It's $1.1 billion a year. And so we're being a little silly if we don't think we already have gambling here. And it's the worst form of gambling.
Since we're going to break format, I'd like to respond back to the governor. Governor, I respect you. As you know, you and I both talked. My in-laws are all from Mississippi. You hired my uncle and appointed him to GAO in Vicksburg. And he hated gambling. Why? Because he saw what happened to the poor people we're talking about that got addicted, that were losing their homes and so on. But I'm curious when we talk about myths, okay? This is from the Terry College of Georgia, right? Crime associated with casinos lags for the first 3 to 4 years, estimates 8% of the crime observed in those counties. Here's from Harvard. Crime increases approximately 10% every year around new gambling facilities. I can go on and on, ladies and gentlemen. If we don't believe in Terry College of Business and Harvard and some of them, it's not hearsay, it's statistical. That's where the information comes from.
Thank you. Senator Thompson, this is another question for you. You have previously linked destination casinos with an increase in crime and human trafficking. Do you believe the advancement in modern technology, such as state-of-the-art cameras and on-premise security at today's destination casinos, make crime of all sorts more difficult? And related to that, do you believe legalization of sports betting or horse racing would have the same negative effects?
You know, it's interesting. My colleague over here said he's been consistent. What he has been consistent about is promoting gambling. You see, the first time it was introduced, it was horse racing. We couldn't get that, he couldn't get that to move. So then we added parimutuel betting. Why? Under testimony, because it could not survive on its own. We couldn't get that done, we moved to casinos. Then we talked about what's happening with the crime, and we kept talking about the crime. Then we've now moved, which he admitted he's not in favor of, sports betting. To answer your question, the crime doesn't exist. That's where the governor and I do agree. It doesn't exist in the business. Anyone that starts a business is going to protect their investment. All of these statistics, even the congressional testimony, you got a gentleman in a room that is a foremost expert that testifies before Congress, will state, and law enforcement will back it up. It's within 100 to 300 yards outside the facility, which is not their responsibility. But to answer your question, yes, it's very safe in there because you don't want that to take place inside it. The human trafficking takes outside of it. And a good example of that would be, look at our Capitol. At least I hope it's not happening. I hope Brandon and I can go into our office and Ginny, and there's no human trafficking or drugs or anything else happening in the Capitol. Go out beyond it, it's the crime. It's where, our PSC, Tim Eccles, will take you on the bus tour. It's just beyond.
Let me just mention, in September, the House Economic Committee that was appointed because of the revenue shortage had a series of hearings. At these hearings, they had two different sheriffs from two different states who each testified that crime in the area of their county where these new casinos were built went down. And if you had been at that here, you would have heard them say that and be questioned about it. Let's talk about the things that I think the people of Georgia are going to have on their mind. Because what this is all about, y'all, is letting the people decide. If the legislature votes, for these two senators both vote to have a constitutional amendment to legalize gaming, that doesn't legalize gaming. The governor signs it. Well, the governor doesn't get a chance to sign it. It's a constitutional amendment. It goes to the public in November. This is a question, should the public demand that they get to vote? Does the public get a chance to tell the politicians they're smart enough to vote for what's right for Georgia? And then if the legislature votes to allow them to vote, to have a constitutional amendment, gambling's not legalized until they vote for it. The people on November the whatever it is of 2020 will get to decide by majority vote. Are we going to have gaming in Georgia? We're not going to have gaming in Georgia. Amending the Constitution. And that's what the governor has said he wanted. He said, I want to let the people decide. And that's what the Speaker of the House said he wanted. Let's let the people decide. Now, there may be some people that think that the public isn't smart enough. I think every one of y'all here knows better. And if the people of Georgia decide, that still doesn't mean you have any casinos. Because
Governor,
then
I'm
you
sorry,
have
your
to have
time's up.
licensing
Time's up.
and
Time's
you
up.
have to...
Sorry.
Okay.
Got to keep time.
And a local
This
vote.
isn't the Democratic debate. This is a Georgia Young Republican debate. Sorry. I love you guys, and I'm sweating from saying that, but yeah, I got to say it.
Got to be a sheriff somewhere.
He did my dirty work. Following up with that, this is to Senator Thompson and Mr. Muzio. With 64% of the voters in recent AJC poll indicating their support for casino gaming, what is the argument for stopping a bill in the legislature as opposed to letting Georgians vote on it?
Well, look, we've learned that Governor Barbour wasn't hired for this lobbying role because it worked in Mississippi. He was hired because he's really good at putting lipstick on a pig here. But look, let me ask you this. No, I mean he's a good debater. Listen, Governor, if your state legislature voted to legalize prostitution in your state, would you be for it?
They wouldn't, and I wouldn't.
Okay. So listen, there are some decisions that are in the responsibility and purview of the legislature, and here's why. In the state of Nevada, shortly after they began down this road, they voted to legalize prostitution. In the state of Nevada, As a pro-life organization, I'll mention this. In the state of Nevada, you have 13 abortion clinics that service 640,000 residents in Las Vegas. Georgia has 15 abortion clinics that service 10.5 million people. There are bad consequences that come with bad decisions. And look, every time this is put before a vote to the people, folks like Mr. Barbour that represent, Governor Barbour, that represent some very wealthy interests that will profit off you and me and folks that visit these casinos and the poor people that we're talking about, they will spend tens of millions of dollars to distort a vote. And it's not about people not being smart. It's about when tens of millions of dollars are spent to lying to people, a vote gets distorted. And time again, look, this is about what happens and what doesn't. Time and time again, we have seen these votes get distorted because they begin to be the most expensive campaigns in their state's history. This is not about letting the people vote. It's not about democracy. It is about the legislature doing their job and standing up for something that will hurt its citizens. Again, we're talking about human trafficking. We're talking about crime. And look, within a casino, despite all the technology that we're talking about, 30% of trafficked children will say that they go into a casino to find their clients. This is not an abstract thing. This is what happens when you put these institutions in a state.
Let me just say this. 64% of the people said they want to vote on it. There's been no money spent by any companies to do that before this poll was run. Okay? So there was no money spent on that. I can tell you this. There's nothing more Republican, there's nothing more conservative than letting the people decide. And if you go back, Nathan Deal came out and said, I'm against Sunday sales, but I'm going to let the people decide. I'm going to go in the booth and I'm going to vote no, but I'm going to let the people have the opportunity to vote for Sunday sales. And there's nothing different here. This is an issue that the people want to vote on, and they clearly want to vote on it without any money being spent towards a campaign. Let's let the voters decide. It's a Republican conservative principle.
Then let's let the people decide whether we have term limits.
All right, this is to Senator Beach and Governor Barbour. As introduced last Thursday, Georgia Senate Bill 403 gets around the constitutional amendment required by defining sports betting as a lottery game. Why shouldn't Georgia voters get a say in its legalization?
Senator Jones, I guess it was yesterday, dropped a constitutional amendment on sports betting. Our legislative council has told us that it would need a constitutional amendment. They've advised Senator Jones, who is carrying the sports betting bill. Senator Jones is carrying sports betting. I'm carrying horse racing, and the House is carrying the destination resort bill, Alan Powell and Ron Stevens. And all three of them would require a constitutional amendment.
Can I just make a point? At the hearing in September about that the House had, the Legislative Council for the House told them in public that you could make an argument that sports betting might be constitutional, but the risk of doing so makes it very imprudent. That the right thing to do, if you want to have this, let the public decide, change the Constitution, and you don't spend the next 5 years litigating before you ever get 1 cent of revenue from sports betting. I thought it was one of the most commonsensical things. I wish I'd have had lawyers like that when I was governor.
Do we have a rebuttal?
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, you're smart in the audience. The whole reason, and when we campaign, is very rarely do people wind up with winning campaigns like I was fortunate enough to do. Usually who spends the most amount of money and executes the best they can wins. The average citizen out there doesn't have the time to research and research and research. We can put a poll out there and say that 50% or 60% or 70% or 80% are in favor of something, and I can rewrite the question and get the exact same thing. Lawyers say it all the time. Do not ask a question that you don't have the answer to. So the reality of it is why did Bert drop that? It's all tied in. It's all creating the narrative. If the end of the day, if what we want to do is change the fact, remember this, #1 state in the country to do business. Not once, not twice, I mean on and on, 7 years in a row. I can promise you, the people of Mississippi would love to have their state look like our state. I can promise you, you'll be hard-pressed to find people that want to convert Georgia to look like Mississippi. It's a great place to hunt. I'll give you that. It's a great place to get tamales. I'll give you that. It's a terrible place to try and get a good job.
The essence of the senator's argument is the public cannot be trusted to make this decision. I believe they can. I believe the people of my state were able to, and I believe the people of Georgia can be trusted to make the right decision for Georgia.
Yeah, I believe that we elect representatives to make good decisions. There are some things that belong before a ballot, but when you have, again, a profit motive, tens of millions of dollars, ultimately billions of dollars at the look, why do they get rich? Why do the casino executives, casino owners get rich? Because they're taking your money and they're not giving it all back to you. They're not taking a product and making something. They're taking your money. They're giving you a small fraction of it back. And they're going to spend that big in elections, and they're going to spend that big to re-elect everyone that voted for a casino to go before the ballot in the first place.
So at this time, we're going to go ahead and go to some of the audience questions real fast. So this one was asked by Mr. Joel Mooneyhan. So sorry if I butchered your last name. I did not mean to do that. I'll open this one to probably the opposing team first. Sorry, can't be brief, but would love to hear both sides elaborate on how their side addresses the human trafficking issue. Georgia leads even without casino gaming. What difference will allowing gambling make? Conversely, how do you justify the economic benefits weighed against the perpetuated increase in trafficking associated with it?
First of all, I want to say that whoever's tweeted at me to try to get me to look at my phone, props to you. I did. I looked down at my phone. I want to say this. Georgia is 36th in the country in terms of gambling addiction, but we are ranked at the bottom in terms of casinos and gaming machines. Why is that important? Because gambling addiction ties closely with human trafficking. 260% increase in terms of if you are a problem gambler, you are 266% more likely to engage in human trafficking and buy someone for sex. If we bring in casinos, we're currently at the bottom. If we bring in gaming machines, we're currently at the bottom. We move up that gambling addiction, which brings up the human trafficking issue. So how do we deal with that on our side? We don't bring in casinos. We don't bring in these gaming machines. We don't bring in the stuff that cause it and increase the demand for trafficked children. And again, props to whoever tweeted me. That's you did a good job.
I want to give kudos to Governor Kemp and Marty Kemp, our First Lady, for addressing this human trafficking issue that we have. We already have human trafficking here, and we do not have casino gaming. We got Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, where a lot of it generates. Bless you. And I will just tell you this: we're going to attack human trafficking, but I think these guys are being a little disingenuous to say horse racing is going to, or even destination resorts is going to cause human trafficking, when we are already one of the top 5 states here in human trafficking. That doesn't mean we're going to stand for it. We're going to fight it, and we're going to stop it.
I would simply add, some of you have been to a casino. Can you think of a worse place to try to practice human trafficking with the kind of security, cameras, lighting, police that is going on there all the time, 24 hours a day? I endorse what Brendan said.
All right.
5 seconds.
Looks like there was something you wanted to say.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll give you 10.
Okay, 10 seconds. If you go to one of the casinos, as they're alluding to, they talk about, you know why they have someone standing next to the elevator now? To make sure that the human traffic, the women that are strippers and the prostitutes can't get up in the rooms. If it was so safe, you wouldn't have someone moderating the elevators in the casinos in today's model.
10 seconds?
That's simply one of the many, many measures that keep you from having that problem in these casinos.
Thank you. You admitted it.
So the next question, this one is actually going to switch gears a little bit and kind of make it more prone to Atlanta itself. This is kind of brought in from someone who's online, John Hayden, who's pretty much asking, for some voters that are actually okay or could be swayed in, this is actually directed towards you, Center Beach, For some voters that actually could be swayed to be pro gambling inside of Georgia, but they are actually kind of stuck on the revenues. Would you be open to kind of reallocating the revenues from education to probably other public works projects, as in MARTA and other transportation projects that are very, very crucial to not only Atlanta, but Georgia for the next 10 years?
Well, you're looking at the chairman of transportation, so I'm all about infrastructure investment, and I do that. I will tell you, I firmly believe there's a direct correlation between infrastructure investment and job creation. And we've seen that at the port, the money we've invested in the port and the money we've invested here. But I would tell you that we have changed the horse racing, or the pari-mutuel wagering bill, to add rural health care. And because I listened to my colleagues, and they were very concerned with the rural health care and being able to continue to fund health care in the rural part of our state. So 25% of it will go to rural health care, not infrastructure, even though I'd be for that. But right now it's Hope Scholarship and education and rural health care on the horse racing piece. I've not seen what is coming over from the House on the casino, on the destination resort.
I just want to make the point, my client and the companies that want to see legalized gaming here because they want to operate in Georgia, they are totally agnostic about how the money's spent. Money ought to be spent the way Georgia wants to spend the money, and we don't have a position in that.
Well, I really appreciate Governor Barbour's client being willing to be magnanimous in how we spend the money that they take from us and then we tax back. Look, here's the thing. Again, when we're talking about revenues and allocations, it will cost you, as a taxpayer, as a parent, as a business person, as a professional, it will cost you $3 for every $1 that you gain in revenue. The whole premise of the question is wrong. And look, Senator Beach, I like you. You've now called me disingenuous a couple times, and that hurts my feelings. But let me say this. I do think it is disingenuous, not Senator Beach, but it is a disingenuous notion to say, I love Marty Kemp, I love the Grace Commission, I love stopping human trafficking, and then trying to come up with a whole system of economics where human trafficking is encouraged. They haven't been able to dispute that. And you have to come up with a whole bunch of machinations to try to prevent it, whether it's someone going up to an elevator, to a hotel room, that we have to have all this security. It is something that has been proven. Again, we're not talking about a mythical destination resort, and I want to talk more about what that really is. But we're talking about something that is proven to increase human trafficking. It is proven to cost states a lot of money, and we see that in Mississippi and we see that elsewhere.
Awesome. Next question, and this is probably going to be directed towards you, Senator Thompson, and you, Senator Beach, as well. From John Henry. If the people are going to be allowed to decide, will local governments, i.e. county and city, be able to block gambling in their jurisdictions? I'll start with you, Senator Thompson.
So the question is, if we allow the voters to decide statewide, will the locals be able to block it? I mean, I suspect they can, but the reality of it is this: is why would we want to do that? I mean, we have a Republican state, we have a structure for elected officials. I mean, I want to go back to what they were talking about before. Let the people decide. Why do we need a governor? Why do they need senators? Why are you paying us to represent the people when, frankly, you could set up a very streamlined level of government and let everything be a referendum? I mean, the reality, that's what you could do, but we don't. We have school boards to keep it local. We have state elected officials. We have congressional. We set that up, and it works in the United States. It is the only form of government in the entire world that works this well. But yet, when we can't get something done, when it doesn't work that way, we introduce, hey, let the people decide. It's interesting. If we talk about let the people decide, like I said before, if you poll with most people, they're in favor of term limits. But yet we're against allowing the people decide.
Well, the reason we have to let the people decide is because our Constitution says we have to on this issue. We could pass enabling legislation, but the Constitution says we have to let the people decide on gaming. So it has to go to a constitutional amendment. To answer your question, in my constitutional amendment for horse racing and pari-mutuel wagering and in the destination resorts, it would have to pass statewide. Then if a county wanted to do it, like Fulton County, then it would have to be passed in Fulton County also. That's the same thing with Sunday sales. That's how it worked. We passed it as a state, then each county voted on it. We've modeled this the same way. So the voters will get two shots at it. statewide and countywide. So, but the Constitution mandates that we vote on this, even if we pass enabling legislation.
And let me just say, that's typical in the United States. Statewide and then local option, that the local people have to want it. That's just very typical.
I've got the next question for Cole. One of the pillars of our Constitution is that of individual liberty. Shouldn't adults have liberty to place wagers between each other, and does restricting that ability violate a principle of the Republican Party?
I'll bet you. I'm happy to bet you some money between you and me right now. There's nothing that restricts that. Nobody's talking about that. And that's what a lot of times, when we're talking about these issues, the other side has brought the lottery a bunch of times. Nobody's advocating getting rid of the lottery. Nobody up here, nobody on our, opposing side is talking about you can't play fantasy football and put $50 on your fantasy football team. Nobody is talking about that. We're not talking about freedom. We're not talking about liberty. We're not talking about democratic issues. We're talking about something that destroys communities and destroys lives. So let's stop minimizing what we're talking about, and let's stop using false arguments. And look, again, speaking of false arguments, let's talk about what a destination resort is. There isn't one. There is not something that is a destination resort that people go to that doesn't have these attributes that we're talking about. When you talk about horse racing, and look, I certainly like the idea of horse racing. Kentucky is sick of it. They're not sick of horse racing, but they have realized it does not work. And that's why you have lobbyists like Governor Barbour and some folks that are really good at selling this, that are going down to Kentucky because they're not satisfied with horse racing. They want casinos. They want the next thing. And it constantly leads to that. So it's a mythical argument. These destination resorts are not going to be places that you and I go and have a blast. It's just not going to happen.
If I could just make this point, what we're talking about here began as the state's revenues going down. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to raise people's taxes? Are there other options to raising people's taxes? If you look at world-class destination resorts like the one built in Boston, which is the most recent urban resort in the United States, $2.6 billion capital expenditure to build it. The largest private development project in the history of the state of Massachusetts. More than 4,500 Massachusetts worked there to build it. They cleaned up a Monsanto chemical plant site where they spent $35 million to clean up the Mystic River, which they didn't have to do. It employs 6,000 to 7,000 people who make 60,000 plus a year. They pay taxes, anticipated taxes, just hadn't been open a year, $160 million just from the gaming tax. Before you ever talk about sales tax on rooms, which here in Georgia is about 15% a night, other sales tax, which is 8.9% here, income tax 5%. The income tax in Boston at that rate would be $20 million a year income tax on the employees. Now, there are a lot of employees that's more money than they've ever made that they will be involved in. And plus, this will be great for tourism. When you go to the Wynn in Boston, you can go in the hotel, stay there a week, never see one gaming device because it's all cordoned off. I mean, obviously they want you to go in there, but Wynn is the only place that 70% of their revenue in Las Vegas is non-gaming. These are destination resorts.
Let me ask y'all this. Why does AOC say that the world's going to end in 5 years if we don't dramatically address climate change? It's so that government can take over every aspect of our life and she can achieve her socialist agenda. So when we're talking about casinos and we're talking about those kind of things and revenue shortages get brought up, don't talk about revenue shortages if you don't dare look at the statistics and how the Georgia budget has grown. This is not a decision between tax increases and casinos. Our government is bloated. You can cut spending. That's a realistic option. That's a conservative option. Look at the growth rate in Georgia's budget before you begin to say there is a crisis and we must deal with it with something that will destroy our state.
Thank you. And the last question is going to go actually to the opposing team. Question is from Eddie. No last name, but thank you, Eddie.
Props, Eddie. Appreciate you.
How does horse racing encourage human trafficking in a way that is different from rock and roll, music concerts, baseball, football, soccer, and any activity which massively draws local or out-of-town crowds? Would you then eliminate any activity which brings massive crowds into the state?
Here's the thing. Look, horse racing doesn't work. It's a dying industry. It's dying in Kentucky and it's dying elsewhere. And that's the main issue. Look, when we're talking about horse racing, we're never just talking about horse racing. Because we're seeing that in Kentucky, we're seeing that elsewhere. There is nowhere in the country. Again, we're talking about what's proven, what you can see. We're not liberals. We look at evidence and we look at history and we look at what's going on around us. We have eyes and we can see it. So look, there is nowhere where you have horse racing that is a thriving industry on its own. It is always coupled with casinos, with sports betting, with gaming machines, all that kind of stuff. So you're never talking about that in isolation. So I want to attack the premise of the question. Eddie, I love you, man, but your question is all wrong. Look, it is not about horse racing alone. That's never an issue because it is always accompanied by, because it never brings in the revenue that's promised. It never delivers, and it is a dying industry because, again, who wants to watch horses run around a track for 90 seconds, sit there while they clean up poop for 30 minutes, and it's not going to last. It's not something I'm going to bring my kids to. They're going to get bored. I've got 3 crazy boys. They're going to get bored. So listen, it's not about horse racing. It is about what always, always, always accompanies that, which is the next big thing that they send in Governor Barbour and other, very smart lobbyists to come lobby for.
Let me just say this, in Senate Resolution 84, which is my constitutional amendment for horse racing, pari-mutuel wagering, it is explicit. No gaming tables, no casino, just horse racing, nothing else, okay? Now, they're going to build, like the Braves did, they're going to build a hotel, retail, restaurants, office, and it's going to be like the Battery with a racetrack in the back. And it's only going to be there 2 months. And let me just say this, too. There will be no taxpayer money, no, in tax inducements, nothing. It'll all be built with private money. It's in the bill that we can't build a parking lot for them. We can't pass a tax break for them. It's all private money to build this facility.
I just add, the Boston win 0 subsidies from the taxpayers of Massachusetts or Everett, Massachusetts. They would not expect, and none of these companies expect, any taxpayer subsidies for building this. It is $2.6 billion that the cost to build the thing in Everett, in Boston, suburban Boston. In fairness, probably wouldn't cost as much here because the water level is so high on Boston Harbor that they had to move all of this water. But it'll be at least a $2.2 billion investment, all private money, and every one of these destination resort casinos, all private money.
Thank you. We said it was the last question, but we got one more question from our sound guy, Mike. Can we give a question to sound guy, Mike? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And we'll limit this to 1 minute. He wants to know if there's any concerns over our Georgia's infrastructure, our roads infrastructure, in dealing with the destination casino. And natural resources as well.
Well, as I said, in Boston, this was a huge cleanup project of a tremendous, long abandoned chemical manufacturing plant. In Boston, and it did require roads, and they made the deal with the state. Wynn paid for the roads that were related to this. And there's going to be impact on transportation infrastructure. We'll put the chairman in charge of that, but that's what's happened in the most recent example.
So real quick, again, we keep saying this. Georgia's #1 place in the country to do business. We have millions of people moving here. They're not trying to move away without casinos. Why? Because we've done a very good job economically bringing in companies that actually manufacture something that we can export out. Do we have infrastructure problems? Absolutely. Look at our roads already. If you talk about bringing a destination resort in, there will be a cost associated with the state. I promise, once that's built, they expect a return on that investment like anyone. And if they're building the roads, who maintains those roads? Do they keep them private, or do they turn them back over to the state to maintain? The cost is not just that. The cost is to the people. We haven't even talked about what the cost is to the addictions and what it does to the families and so on and so on. But the reality is, we are number one in the country, have been number one in the country, will continue to be number one in the country to do business. That's not the kind of business Georgians want.
Thank you, Senator Thompson. That brings us to our last round of closing statements, and we will start with Senator Beach.
Well, first off, again, thank you all for having this. It's been good debate, and Senator Thompson and I can disagree without being disagreeable. We both respect each other. Let me just say this. If there was a company, I was President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for 15 years up in North Fulton, and if we had a company come to us and say, we want to build a $2.5 billion investment, create 7,000 permanent jobs, 5,000 construction jobs, and by the way, we don't want any tax incentives, no tax abatements, we'd have thrown a parade for them. But since it has gambling, we're not willing to do that. This is all private money, okay, number one. Number two, it's about economic development and jobs, and it does create revenue for our Hope Scholarship. The other thing I'd point out to you is this. I serve on the World Congress Center Board Oversight Committee for the Senate. I represent the Senate on the World Congress Center. They've got 1.8 billion square feet that they've got to fill every week. That's a big animal to feed, that World Congress Center. We surveyed every company that came and did a show the last 2 years at our World Congress Center. 22% of them said, we'll never come back. There's nothing to do at night. The aquarium closes at 7. The College Football Hall of Fame closes at 7. World of Coke closes at 6. There is no nighttime attractions. And when you're competing with Nashville that's got music down Broad Street, New Orleans that has jazz and all the entertainment at night, Orlando, Las Vegas, Chicago, we don't have a lot of nighttime activity in the metro region for people that want to come here and bring a convention. And let me tell you something, that convention business is big. Just 2 weeks ago, we had 60,000 people from a poultry convention. Every hotel and restaurant was full. But they were looking for things to do at night. And this would be an added amenity for us. And I agree, we're the number one state to do business, 7 years running. And if we were going to base our whole economy on gaming, I probably wouldn't be for it. We've got Fortune 500 companies here. This is an added amenity for tourism, for destination resorts. And again, it's creating jobs, and it's creating our revenue for our Hope and rural health care and whatever else we decide at the end to do with it. But I, again, want to go back and close with this final statement. There is nothing more Republican and more conservative than letting the voters decide and letting them have a vote on this issue. With that, again, I want to thank you all for what you do. Bruce, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it. And again, we got all hands on deck in November. We got to win. We got to win all these seats. So again, thank you for what you do. And Gabe, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Senator Beach. Cole?
Yeah, thank you. And Senator Beach, Governor Barbour, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for what you do, for being here, and for being willing to talk about this. Look, I'm 31 years old. Despite my gray hair and despite what my 5-year-old tells me, I don't think I'm that old. I try to accumulate wisdom, but I don't know how much I actually have. I'm a dad of 4 kids, and I run a nonprofit, so I don't sleep all that much. And I wouldn't tell you that I'm very smart. But what I can tell you is that if a company said, I want to invest $250 million, and I want to do all these things, and I don't expect anything in return, being a guy that's not that old, not that smart, and doesn't get all that much sleep, I would look at them and say, why? And what they would have to tell you, if they're being honest, is because they are going to profit a whole bunch of money from the people that they're placing that entity in. They're going to take your money, and they're going to laugh all the way to the bank. What we see time and time again, look, we're not liberals. We don't make up stuff. We don't pretend things exist that don't. We look at history, we look at facts, we look at what goes on in the world around us, and we look at human nature. This, what we're talking about tonight, fails. It fails to deliver the revenue promises. It fails to deliver jobs. It fails to deliver infrastructure. It ruins families. It ruins lives. People are more impoverished because casinos and horse races are near them. They don't last. They always come back and ask for more. And this isn't about democratic principles. This isn't about just put it to a vote. That's a really nice slogan. You can put it on a bumper sticker. But the reality is that the people that will profit off you and profit off your poor neighbor that's just hoping for a break, they're going to make so much money that spending $250 million over the course of a campaign to lie to you is going to be nothing. They're going to trick you, and they're going to laugh all the way to the bank. This is a bad idea, and I think it's coming from a good place. again, I like Senator Beach. He may not like me after tonight, but I like him. This is a bad idea in terms of the reality, what we have seen time and time again. And look, again, they're painting a picture of a mythical resort because they got to cross their fingers, cross their heart, and really hope and pray that Georgia is somehow different than every other state where it's been tried. And I love Georgia. And Georgia is a different sort of place. But because something has failed everywhere else doesn't mean that it's at risk, doesn't mean that Georgia is so special that somehow it won't fail here. Again, I'm a dad with 4 kids. And that's not the kind of state that I want to raise my kids in. I want the best for them, and I'm so proud to be a Georgian. I love it. And those kids are going to grow up in a state that they adore. We have a governor that is committed to being the #1 state in the country to do business and the #1 state in the country to raise a family. Those are not two dichotomous ideas. We have to make sure that we preserve that. And doing something along these lines destroys that idea. It destroys business. It destroys our business ranking. And it destroys our abilities for families to thrive. This is a bad idea from some really good people that I hope we'll still be friends. But I really hope that you'll stand up and say this isn't about a choice. This is about not doing something that will destroy our state.
Governor Barbour, before we move forward with you, everyone keep in mind that the poll is back open. I'm going to ask that you all go back and vote again as you're hearing these closing statements. And also the number, just in case, 435-633-9189. Continuing closing statements, Governor Barbour, 3 minutes.
Senator Beach made the very, very important point that if this was just any other business that came in here and said we want to spend $2.5 billion, have 4,500 construction workers, 6,000 or 7,000 permanent employees that make $60,000 or $70,000 a year, increase tourism, and pay about $250 or $300 million a year in taxes for one casino, we'd have a parade for them. That is exactly right. And the idea that this is somehow not private, this is all private. And to say that somehow the taxpayers are going to get the shaft on this, the fact is the taxpayers are not going to have a tax increase because the revenue is added in this way, not to require a tax increase. These are private businesses that pay huge amount of taxes, and yes, they make money. Yes, they make money, and the people that go there understand what they're doing. And that is just a plain, cold fact. So I would say to you very sincerely, if you think we ought to do away with gaming in Georgia, vote to do away with the lottery. If you realize that's bad for Georgia, bad for the Hope Scholarship, then I think you ought to do the same thing that Zell Miller did, the same thing that Nathan Deal did. Got a question? Let the people of Georgia decide whether or not you should legalize gaming in Georgia. This is not some issue that's too sophisticated for Georgians to understand. They understand it cold. Let them decide. And then I would ask one other thing. Tomorrow, pick up the phone and call your legislator and say, we ought to get to decide. Brandon, call Brandon. We ought to get to decide whether this is, just like we were allowed to decide Sunday sales, just like we were allowed to decide the lottery. Do not be a politician that thinks the public can't be trusted to make these kind of decisions. The people of Georgia are not stupid. They know what they're for and they know why. Let the people decide. Call your member.
My number is 678-640-1811.
Well, first of all, let me say thanks for coming out and having this debate. Okay, I think it's healthy in our state to have debates about things we're concerned about on both sides. Governor, I appreciate you trying to create a narrative that I don't trust the people. But frankly, I mean, if we were going to get into mudslinging, I could pull a whole bunch about Mississippi, and I'm not going to go any further with that. The reality of it is in my district, we polled Cherokee and Bartow County. It doesn't poll, okay? So I do listen to the people. But listen here. We have the busiest airport in the world. It's a jewel. But how many people want that airport in their backyard? They want to use that airport. They love the revenue it creates. They love the access, but they do not want that airport in their backyard. And if you don't believe in that, look where the development is. We don't have the developments there. You go up into Alpharetta and all the areas that are where the nicer homes, the Buckhead, they want access, but we don't want it. There's a reason for that. When we talk about we should have open decisions on things, we limit in our state how many drinks someone can have. Why? Because it affects other people. You go to get meds because of fentanyl crisis. We limit that. Why? Because it affects other people. There are lots of times in society that we have laws that don't allow people to just do whatever they want because it affects other people in society. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you giving us the opportunity just to share our opposition to this. And frankly, if you're in my district and you want to call me, you know my cell phone's out there, and show you're in favor of it, I encourage you to do it, but you will be in the minority.
All right. Thank you, Senator Thompson. Let's give a round of applause to all of our debaters tonight. And as is starting to become customary, we've got some AYR lapel pins to thank all of you guys for coming out. Hope you can remember us fondly, and especially Governor Barbour, your time here in Atlanta with us. Guys, that was a great debate. Thanks, Alan. Great debate. But I do want to say something that, coming out to a debate like this, gathering around with your friends, having a good time, drinking a beer at the bar, that's all fun and games. But when it comes time to electing Republicans and maybe more importantly, beating the Democrats, we've got Crazy Bernie. He's appears to be the nominee for the Democrats. Do we want to beat Crazy Bernie?
Yeah, I hope so.
I want to beat Crazy Bernie. I want to beat the Democrats in the fall, guys, in 2020. And so that's why AYR, we're taking an initiative to start doing get out the vote and voter registration. So we're going to have our first voter registration drive on March 7th. It's going to be a door-to-door initiative. Thank you. So we're going to, like I said, March 7th, we're going to meet at Taco Mac at the Prado, where we had our last monthly meeting. We're going to have about 30 minutes of a small training on how to use the app, and then we're going to go out and knock on doors and get voters registered. You guys remember Stacey Abrams was so successful 4 years ago because she was able to register voters as Democrats, right, to vote Democrat. And so we're gonna do our best to counter that and get out there and register people to vote. So again, March 7th, and then the best part is that afterwards we're gonna have a free happy hour. If you've knocked on doors, we're gonna have free drinks for you guys that actually participated in the effort. I also want to mention another event we have on March 12th. It's our membership appreciation event. That's going to be at Scofflaw Brewing. We've got member tickets priced for members at $15. That includes drinks. It includes food. Good time with friends. Non-member tickets, $40. So it really makes sense to become an AYR member if you're interested in that. So with that, do we have results? Let me give the number one more time. It's the same number that you texted earlier at the beginning of the debate. Do you have the? Where's mine? Here we go. 435-633-9189. It's also up on the screens. Say it one more time. 435-633-9189. We'll leave it open for about 30 more seconds. Colt. Where's Joe? Is Colt here? Do you have a GYR announcement? Sure, why not? All right. I know everyone's waiting with bated breath for the results.
Great job. Thank you.
Good afternoon or evening. It's evening, right? Okay, so I have to say, do you not all love how Governor Barbour says casino? Yeah. Right? All right, so I'm Colt Chambers, and I am so thrilled to be here tonight as your state chairman of the Georgia Young Republicans. And I'm so excited that Gabe allowed me the opportunity to speak and the initiatives that he and his board have taken to really engage with the voters in the metro Atlanta area, right, through your door-to-door voter registration outreach effort. I strongly encourage you to take this opportunity to go out and meet with voters and to, of course, help register folks and truly use this opportunity to help with our 2020 election efforts, right? We have a long road to pave and to go down, right? To re-elect our president, Donald Trump, and yeah, right? Woo! And to re-elect Senator David Perdue and to save our other Senate seat, regardless of who you're supporting for that. But I just want to be here tonight to let you know that our Georgia Young Republican State Convention is happening in April 4th in Alpharetta at the Alpharetta City Hall. You can go to our Georgia Young Republicans website and Facebook page to learn more about that. But as a member of one of our chartered chapters here in Atlanta, you are very welcome to attend, and I hope that you will. We're looking to continue our administration for 2 more years through our AYR Strong campaign. So I hope you'll learn more about that. And yeah, thank you so much, Gabe, and your team for allowing me to speak tonight and for hosting this very wonderful event. Thank you so much to the speakers for being here tonight. So I'll turn it back over to you, Gabe.
All right, guys, one more announcement while we crunch numbers. I promise you we got them. They're in. Jenny has one announcement for us.
Hey everyone, in supporting the efforts of Young Republicans, I wanted you all to know about an event coming up at Kennesaw State University for their Turning Point USA chapter. They are having Charlie Kirk on March 23rd on Walter Kelly Road in Marietta. It is their Marietta campus gymnasium. So we'd really appreciate if you could support the Young Republicans at Kennesaw State and their Turning Point chapter for having such a prominent speaker come. Thank you.
Sorry. All right. All right, I lied a little bit. We don't have all the numbers. We do have the numbers for the side that was in favor of the debate. Before the debate, they came in 62% to legalize gambling. After the debate, 76%. The side in favor of the resolution is the winner of the debate. Congratulations. All right, that's it, guys. Thanks for coming out.